The wind howled through the narrow canyon, carrying the scent of dust and ancient incense. Echoes of footsteps multiplied against the rose-red cliffs, growing louder, relentless. Then came the clamor metal clashing on stone, horses snorting in the heat, voices barking in a foreign tongue. A young woman pressed her back against the cool wall of the temple, her heart pounding like a war drum. She clutched the hem of her robe, woven with threads of gold that caught the fading light. Around her, sisters in service to the goddess whispered prayers, their faces pale under veils. The invaders poured in like a flood, their armored forms blocking the sun. Spears glinted, shields bore eagles that seemed to scream victory. One soldier, his eyes cold as the desert night, reached out. She recoiled, but there was nowhere to run. The city that had stood eternal was falling, and with it, everything she held sacred. But this was only the beginning. What you're about to hear involves themes of conquest, forced assimilation, and the dark undercurrents of empire building, including references to sexual exploitation in ancient warfare. These events draw from historical records, but they're disturbing. We focus on the mechanisms of power, not the sensational details. If it's too much, pause or step away, no judgment. For those who stay, let's uncover the system that turned a thriving kingdom into a footnote. This wasn't a frenzy of blood and fire, the kind of sack that levels cities in a day. No, this was colder, more calculated, a machine of empire grinding forward, absorbing everything in its path. In the year we now call 106 AD, the Roman Emperor Trajan extended his reach into the sands of Arabia, annexing the Nabataean kingdom without a single pitched battle recorded in the chronicles. Petra, that marvel carved from living rock, didn't burn, it simply changed hands. Yet beneath the official story of peaceful integration lies a darker reality. The erasure of a culture, the scattering of its people, and whispers of fates worse than death for those who serve the old gods. Historians debate the exact toll. Some say it was bloodless, others point to scattered resistance and the inevitable human cost of Roman expansion. Estimates of those displaced or enslaved vary wildly, from thousands to tens of thousands, though primary sources remain frustratingly silent. What we do know is this: Nabataea, a realm built on trade and ingenuity, became Arabia Petraea, a province feeding Rome's endless hunger. Why did it happen? Power doesn't ask permission. And why does it echo today? Because empires still swallow worlds, leaving ghosts in the ruins. To understand how it all unraveled, we must go back to the roots of two worlds on a collision course. The Roman Empire under Trajan was a colossus at its peak, stretching from the misty forests of Britain to the sun-baked Nile. Trajan himself, born in Hispania but forged in the legions, had risen through grit and glory. He wasn't a tyrant born to the purple. He earned his throne after Nerva's death in 98 AD, adopted as successor in a move that stabilized the realm. His early years focused on internal reforms, feeding the poor, building aqueducts, expanding the frontiers, but ambition burned in him like the eternal flame. By the early 102nd, his eyes turned east, where wealth flowed like rivers of spice and silk. Nabataea, meanwhile, was a miracle of the desert. Emerging from nomadic tribes in the 4th century BC, they had tamed the arid wastes between the Red Sea and the Euphrates. Their capital, Petra, wasn't just a city, it was a fortress of ingenuity, hidden in a basin ringed by mountains, accessible only through the Seek, a twisting gorge that funneled invaders into kill zones. The Nabataeans mastered water, channeling rare rains into cisterns that sustained gardens amid the rocks. Trade was their lifeblood. Caravans laden with frankincense from Arabia, myrrh from Yemen, silks from distant China, all taxed and protected under their watchful eyes. Their gods reflected this blend: Dushara, the lord of the mountains, and Al-Uzza, the mighty one, often depicted as a star or lioness. Women held power here, more than in many lands. Priestesses led rituals, interpreting omens in temples carved high into the cliffs. But cracks were forming. By the late 1st century AD, Rome's shadow loomed. The Nabataean king, Rabbel II, ruled from Petra, but his realm was squeezed between Roman Syria to the north and Egypt to the south. Trade routes shifted seaward, bypassing the overland paths that enriched Nabataea. Rabbel died that spring, leaving no clear heir, his son, perhaps too young, or the throne contested. Whispers in the market spoke of internal strife, tribes fracturing along old lines. Trajan saw opportunity. He wasn't driven by blind cruelty. This was strategy. Annexing Nabataea secured the eastern flank, protected trade, and added a buffer against Parthia, Rome's eternal rival. His general, Cornelius Palma, governor of Syria, moved swiftly with legions hardened from Dacian wars. Trajan himself never set foot in Petra. He was busy planning grander conquests, but his machine didn't need him there. The system was oiled by bureaucracy. Spies reported weaknesses, diplomats sowed doubt, and soldiers enforced the inevitable. Formative for Trajan, a youth spent in military camps, witnessing the chaos after Nero's fall. He learned that mercy could be a weapon, but hesitation was death. One pivotal moment, his victory in Dacia, where he flooded the market with gold from captured mines, funding his ambitions. Now, with Nabataea vulnerable, the turning point came. Word reached Rome of Rabbel's death. "The time is now," Trajan decreed from his palace. Orders flew east on swift couriers. Cornelius Palma assembled his forces auxiliaries from Syria, cavalry from allied tribes, and marched south. No grand declaration of war, just the inexorable advance of empire. The sun beat down mercilessly on the caravan routes as Cornelius Palma led his column toward Petra. Dust clouds rose like omens, swirling around the feet of 10,000 men. The air smelled of leather and sweat, mixed with the faint spice of distant markets. Birds wheeled overhead, their cries piercing the tense silence. Palma, a seasoned commander with scars from frontier skirmishes, rode at the front, his cloak billowing. He wasn't a monster, he was a functionary, executing the will of Rome with the precision of a scribe tallying grain. In Petra, life pulsed as it always had. Merchants haggled in the colonnaded streets, their voices echoing off facades etched with gods and vines. Children darted through shadows, laughing unaware. But in the temples, unease stirred. Aisha, a priestess of Al-Uzza, tended the sacred flame in a chamber high above the city. At 25, she had dedicated her life to the goddess virgin by vow, guardian of rituals that bound the community. Her days were rhythm, offerings of incense, chants under starlit skies, interpreting dreams for pilgrims. She came from a line of such women, her mother before her serving in the same halls. Aisha's world was one of balance, man and desert, god and mortal. She didn't know the storm approaching, but that night, as she gazed from the cliff, distant torches flickered on the horizon. The confrontation began subtly. Palma's envoys arrived first, bearing scrolls sealed with Trajan's eagle. They demanded submission, swear fealty, pay tribute, open the gates. Nabataean elders gathered in the great theater, carved seats filled with worried faces. Some argued for resistance, their warriors had repelled invaders before, using the terrain like a weapon. Others saw the futility. Rome's legions were endless, their siege engines legends. No king to rally them, the decision fractured. A few tribes fled into the wastes, but Petra's gates creaked open. Palma entered without fanfare, his troops filing through the Siq like a serpent coiling. The act was swift, banners raised, a Roman garrison established. But this wasn't about individuals. It was the system asserting dominance. Temples were inspected, treasures inventoried. Priestesses like Aisha faced the demand, convert your rights to Roman tastes, or face dispersal. Resistance meant chains. Historians suggest scattered uprisings in outlying areas, quickly crushed. The evidence points to no mass slaughter, but displacement was real. Families torn, caravans redirected under Roman tolls. For Aisha, the breaking came that evening. Soldiers stormed the temple, their boots profaning the sanctified ground. She stood firm, invoking Al-Uzza's protection. The refusal sparked chaos, a shove, a fall, cries echoing. Implication hung heavy. Those who defied were marked for harsher fates, shipped to distant markets or villas. The system didn't name it, it just happened. A cog in the machine of conquest. Word spread like wildfire through the valleys. Merchants paused their trades, whispering of the temple's violation. This wasn't random, it was policy. Rome absorbed gods, renaming Al-Uzza as Venus, Dushara as Dionysus. But the human cost? Priestesses, symbols of old power, were prime targets. Stripped of status, many vanished into the empire's underbelly. Servants. Entertainers, worse. Estimates vary, some chronicles hint at thousands affected, though exact numbers elude us. A breather here. Amid the tension, one soldier paused, gazing at the carved facade in awe. "These barbarians built wonders," he muttered, a flicker of humanity in the grind. But that wasn't the worst part. As Palma consolidated, the escalation rippled outward. From Palma's view, it was efficient administration. Reports flowed back to Trajan. The province is secured, revenues projected to double. He implemented the system incentives for loyalty, punishments for dissent, local officials co-opted, taxes levied on once free trade. In a different region, say Basra to the north, the pattern repeated, Nabataean shrines repurposed, populations resettled. A witness, Malik, a merchant who'd traversed the incense roads for years, saw it unfold. He wasn't targeted directly, his wealth bought passage, but he watched as caravans dwindled, guards now Roman. One quiet detail, the scent of frankincense lingered in empty stalls, a ghost of prosperity. From his perch, the escalation was clear. Not just conquest, but transformation. Villages emptied as people fled or were conscripted. A specific moment, a group of priestesses herded onto wagons, bound for Antioch. Their cries cut through the night, a stark contrast to Petra's former splendor. The machine hummed. Centurions reported quotas. Scribes tallied slaves. Numbers in human terms. Markets flooded with exotics from the east, feeding Rome's villas and brothels. Historians debate the scale, perhaps not 45,000, but thousands caught in the net. A breather. In the cool of dawn, Malik shared bread with a legionary, trading stories of distant lands. Irony in the air, enemies breaking fast together. What happened next would reshape the desert forever. The climax built slowly, time stretching as resistance coalesced. In the heart of Petra, the breaking point arrived. Scattered tribes, loyal to old ways, ambushed Roman patrols in the wadis. Palma responded with force, cavalry sweeps, villages raised as examples. The peak horror, a standoff at a high temple, where holdouts barricaded. Smoke rose as flames licked sacred stones, but implication did the work, no need for graphic tales. The system cracked slightly. Overreach sparked murmurs in Rome's Senate. But for the Nabataeans, it was the end. Aisha, if she survived, represented the broken, her vows shattered, spirit dispersed. The error? Palma's haste, perhaps, in dismantling too quickly. Resistance flared briefly, then faded. What broke was the old order, Petra's independence vanishing like morning mist. In the aftermath, Trajan celebrated with coins minted. Arabia adquisita, Arabia acquired. No heroic death for him. He died in 117 AD, mid-campaign against Parthia, struck by illness. His successor, Hadrian, pulled back, abandoning some gains. For Nabataea, survivors blended into the province, some thrived under Roman roads, others faded. Power shifted north, Petra declining as Palmyra rose. Long-term, trade rerouted, culture hybridized. One ironic detail, the documents meant to record taxes preserved Nabataean script, echoes of a lost tongue. Modern discovery brings it back. In the 19th century, explorers like Johann Burckhardt rediscovered Petra, hidden for ages. Disguised as a Muslim pilgrim, he wandered the sick in 1812, sketching ruins that proved the kingdom's grandeur. Excavations since by teams from Jordan and abroad unearthed temples, tombs, revealing Roman overlays on Nabataean art, pottery shards, inscriptions. They prove continuity, not total erasure. A tangible find, a priestess's seal, etched with al-Uzza, whispering of women's roles. Why it matters. This teaches about power's subtlety, conquest without swords, erasure through assimilation. A modern parallel, colonial empires redrawing maps, cultures absorbed into globals. The universal truth, resilience endures. Even in silence, stories survive. Echo the opening. The wind still howls through the canyon, but now tourists tread where soldiers marched. What changed? The cliffs remain, scarred but standing. The guardians of Nabataea were meant to fade into sand, but they didn't. Their echoes live in stone carvings, in archaeological digs, in the memory we keep alive. And now they're here with you, because you listened. If this moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. What surprises you most about forgotten empires? Subscribe for more dives into history's shadows. And remember, in the quiet of ruins, the past whispers warnings.